One of our favourite people in the world is the great Dave Rubin, the Rubin Report, available on Rumble. It is a great show, and he's a wonderful bloke. Joining us from the Free State of Florida is, funnily enough, Dave Rubin. How are you, great man?
What are the chances that you'd be introing me and I'd be sitting right here at the exact same time? It's wild.
How does this happen so damn regularly? But I'm so glad it does. Now, let's talk about Trump and the Supreme Court. Now, everyone would know by now, 9-0 in his favour. States can't, surprise, surprise, bounce people off the ballot. But it's the reaction to it that I love. Like, lefties truly thought that there was a way to kill off Donald Trump that wasn't beating him in an election.
This is a 5-4 ruling on part of it.
This is actually a 5-4 decision.
It's 5-4.
Trump will take this, spin it, spread the misinformation, disinformation on it, so it's a win for them.
He's on the ballot, and voters will vote, and he looks like he's headed to become the Republican nominee for president.
You can't save a people from themselves. If they're determined to reelect him after he organized that insurrection, then there's nothing to stop the people from doing that.
Yeah, the reaction really is the interesting part here, because everyone knew, or at least everyone with their head on straight, knew that the Supreme Court was not going to allow for certain states to take him off the ballot. I don't think we all knew it was going to be 9-0. I think that's quite good for the future of democracy. But watching the talking heads of MSNBC and The View and the rest of them, basically saying this is an assault on democracy because the Supreme Court did not do what they wanted the Supreme Court to do it's the height of irony. It's the height of ridiculousness. These people, the problem with so much of the modern left is they want to burn down our institutions when they don't do what they want. And when the Supreme Court does do the right thing, they just will at the same time tell you that it's an illegitimate branch or they're governing from their bench, et cetera, et cetera. But this is a good day in America, let's put it that way, because if Trump is not going to be the president, it should be done at the ballot box on all 50 states. It should not be done any other way. And that really, I think most Americans know that, short of like the people with the true Trump derangement syndrome. Most of them happen to be on MSNBC or The View. Most people actually do accept that.
Well, also, when we talk about the ballot box, I love when the arguments of the 1990s are used in 2024 going into, a quarter of a century into a quarter of our way through the 21st century. That's a long way around to make this point. But Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, he's talking about how, we need to do everything we can to fight against rules like voter ID laws.
Right to vote is still under attack. And that is why the Justice Department is fighting back. That is why one of the first things I did when I came into office was to double the size of the voting section of the Civil Rights Division. That is why we are challenging efforts by states and jurisdictions to implement discriminatory, burdensome, and unnecessary restrictions on access to the ballot. That is why we are working to block the adoption of discriminatory redistricting plans that dilute the vote of black voters and other voters of color.
I just find this stuff so patronising, and also it's so unrealistic. Like, we just went through a system where everyone was told to stay inside. Like, big government has had its way in the past few years, and the idea that now black voters couldn't possibly find a way to identify themselves when they needed to buy anything on the internet or go anywhere.
Paul, you're not going to believe this, but I've seen black people on planes. And you know what you need to get on a plane? Yeah, it's true. Almost every plane ride that I've ever taken, there's been several black people on that plane. And that means that those black people were able to attain identification like every other American. You're right, it's completely patronizing. I would argue it's actually racist. By the way, in certain states, Nikki Haley, when she was governor of South Carolina, so this is 10 or 12 years ago, she said she wanted people to have IDs to vote. The left went crazy, so she said, okay, the government will fund it. If you cannot get an ID for whatever reason, the government will send a car to your house, will take care of everything. And I think she told me about 20 people took them up on that offer. So this misnomer that there's swaths of people who happen to be brown and black that cannot get IDs is completely ridiculous. I would also tell you that, I lived in California where you do not have to show an ID to vote, which is completely absurd. Then I move here to the free state of Florida where I do vote, and you have to show an ID. And I can tell you as a voter, not as a pundit, just as a regular American citizen, I can tell you that when I left the polling station in Florida, you feel much more like your vote matters, it counts, it's secure, and everything else, as opposed to just wandering in to a school that's closed that day and telling me, oh yeah, I'm Dave Rubin and I live here and let's do this. So the problem is the Democrats don't want faith in the system, so they do everything possible to undermine that faith.
All right, Super Tuesday, no giant surprise about the results. But there is something that I wanted to ask you as a guy who, no doubt is going to have his issues with Donald Trump after trying to back in Ron DeSantis, but still obviously clearly prefers him over Joe Biden. Do you, Trump and Biden steaming away, both going to be the nominees. But do you pay much attention to the not Trump and not Biden vote? Because the great fear, of course, if you're a Democrat, is that X% won't turn up. If you're a Republican, X% won't turn up. It's sort of like Nikki Haley is the physical embodiment of the, yep, I'm not turning up.
Yeah, well, that's why I think Robert F. Kennedy Jr. could play an interesting role in this election, especially if he decides to take over the Libertarian Party. Everyone thinks we have two parties in America. We've got more than two parties, but we have two major parties. But then the Libertarian Party is also on all of the ballots. So they have ballot access, which means that if he took over the Libertarian Party, then every single person, in essence, he'd be the third name that everyone would see. And he, I think, would take away a bunch from Trump because he was more hardcore against lockdowns and all of that. And that's what a lot of the base likes. So I think he could take some from Trump. Now, he is also an ex-Democrat. He was a Democrat 4 months ago. So he could take some from Biden as well. That would be interesting. Now, I don't know that he's going to make that move with the Libertarian Party. But you're also right that a certain amount of people right now, and I think you can really feel this even leading up to Super Tuesday, there's very little momentum behind this election right now. Everyone feels like we're just getting a rerun. Everyone feels that, across the board, everyone feels that Biden is too old. But Trump is also 77. We've done this before. Does anyone really believe that either one of these guys are going to be the one to walk in and fix all of our problems? I don't think most people think that.
Enjoy many of those beaches in beautiful Florida. We love you, man. Talk to you soon. Dave Rubin.
You got some pretty sweet ones in Australia yourself, my friend.